All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle a question that's been bugging managers for, well, decades. We're digging into why building software is so fundamentally different from building, say, a bridge, and what that really means for how we should be leading our teams. So let's just get right into it. Why is it that the project management rules that work perfectly for building a skyscraper just completely fall apart when you try to apply them to building an app? The authors of Manage the Unmanageable just nail it. It's not that programmers are actually unmanageable. It's that the work they do and who they are requires a completely different kind of management. One that actually understands the craft, the creativity, and most importantly, the people. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the core conflict at play. Then, we'll dive into these two different worlds of management and compare them across three key areas: how they plan, how they define success, and how they view their teams. And we'll wrap it all up with some pretty fascinating facts and key takeaways. All right, first up, what is the core problem here? Let's dig into this fundamental clash of expectations. Okay, so here's the deal. Traditional management is all about predictability. It's like building a bridge, right? You've got this super detailed blueprint before anyone even thinks about digging a hole. But software is a journey of discovery. It's more like setting off to explore a new continent with just a rough map. You have no idea what you're going to find, and that creates this massive clash of expectations. And this friction, this clash, it basically creates two completely different ways of thinking about management. You can picture them as two separate worlds, each with its own rulebook, its own map and compass for getting things done. So, in one corner, you've got your classic project management. Think PMBOK, the project management body of knowledge. It's all about process, systems, fantastic for that predictable stuff, like building our bridge. And in the other corner, you have software project management. This world is all about the people, the craftsmanship. It's way more like exploring that brand new continent where, you're literally drawing the map as you go. Okay, let's jump into the first big difference, how each of these worlds even thinks about planning. This is a big one. You see, software planning has this brilliant idea called the cone of uncertainty. And what it basically says is that any estimate you make at the very start of a project, it's going to be wrong, probably wildly wrong. Why? Because the team just doesn't know enough yet. The real clarity, the real accuracy, that only comes later as they actually start building and learning. And you can see this whole philosophical divide perfectly in the tools they use. You've got the Gantt chart from classic PM. It's like a static blueprint, right? All the tasks laid out on a fixed timeline. But then you look at something like a burn-down chart, which is super common in Agile. That's a living, breathing dashboard. It's not tracking what's done, it's tracking the work that's left. It's designed from the ground up to handle change every single day. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that for software, the real value of a plan isn't how perfect it looks on day one. It's how well it can adapt. Like this quote says, "A flexible plan that can actually roll with the punches is way more valuable than some perfect plan that shatters the second it meets reality." And this whole idea of adapting instead of just predicting, well, that leads us right into our next big point. How do you even define success? I mean, what does done actually mean in these two different worlds? In classic project management, success is often really straightforward. It's about delivering a specific output. Did you ship the software with all the features on the list? Did you hit the deadline? Did you stay on budget? If you can check all those boxes, hey, you win. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even the PMBOK guide, the Bible of traditional management, is starting to change its tune. The latest version says projects need to drive outcomes that deliver value, not just spit out outputs. And that is a huge deal. It's basically saying, who cares if you delivered a feature if it doesn't actually solve a customer's problem or help the business? Which brings us to our last, and honestly, maybe the most important point of all, how we think about the people doing the work. Are they just resources you can swap in and out like cogs in a machine? Or are they skilled craftspeople? Okay, you have to hear about this. It's called Conway's Law, and it's so profound. It says that the design of your system will end up being a copy of your organization's communication structure. You literally can't separate the people from the product. The classic example is if you tell 4 teams to build a compiler, you're going to get a 4-pass compiler. How your teams are structured and how they talk to each other directly, physically shapes the software they create. So what does that mean for a manager? It means you have to stop managing resources and start leading people. And that's a big shift. It means earning their technical respect, trusting them to make their own commitments, and giving them the freedom to figure out the best way to build something. Your job? Your job becomes running interference. You're the one clearing roadblocks so they can do their best work. Okay, so let's tie all this together. What's the big takeaway? We'll wrap things up with a resolution to this whole conflict and a few mind-blowing facts that really drive it home. Look, the answer isn't to say one method is good and the other is bad. That's not the point at all. In fact, the PMBOK guide itself says you have to tailor based on context. The real key, the real skill, is knowing what kind of project you're on. Are you building that predictable bridge, or are you exploring that unknown continent? Once you know that, you know which approach to take. And if you're still not convinced, check out these numbers. First, this one is just staggering. Studies show that the very best programmers can be 25 times more productive than the least productive ones. 25 to 1. That just hammers home why treating these folks like skilled artisans, not interchangeable parts, is so critical. And second, let's talk about waste. You know those big traditional projects with huge upfront design phases? Well, it turns out that in many of them, up to 80% of that detailed architectural planning is for features that never even see the light of day. They get cut or changed. That's a staggering amount of wasted effort. And last but not least, you've got to watch out for a couple of classic mind traps. First, there's Parkinson's law, the idea that work just magically expands to fill whatever time you give it. And then there's the student syndrome, procrastinating until the very last minute. An adaptive, iterative approach really helps fight both of these by keeping the goals small and immediate. So the next time you're managing a project, the real question isn't, are my programmers manageable? The real question is, how am I going to adapt my management style to fit the work they actually do? How are you going to create the right conditions for them to successfully explore that new continent?